they say you can pick your friends, but you can't pick your family. You didn't choose to join your family. A husband and wife can choose to join each other, but the kids can't choose.
Well, there is some religious idea that you did choose your family, and like this is the family that you chose before you came to Earth. Before you were born, you had a choice of which family you were going to choose, and you chose this family. And now you're stuck with it. This is the family that you've got.
We got to the point. Where did we get to the point? We were just on the tier 1. So we had the zeroth. We decided to rename that. Instead of tier 1 being yourself, your zeroth community is yourself.
Okay.
And your first community is your relationship, family relationships. Let's just assume that we talked about that completely.
I think that we did. I think we did finish that out. Let's see. There was maybe a question about expectations. The more expectations that you have for a community, the closer that community is to you. Is that correct? Does that feel right?
I don't know that that's right.
Okay, tell me about that.
It's a premise. The more expectations you have, the closer the community is to you. I get that that's saying that you have a lot of different modes that you interact with your family community, the community in your house. Expectations or modes of contact.
Modes of contact, like you can call them up and text them and message them, or no, that's modes of communication.
Yeah. That you have a relationship. Your relationship is joined by many more aspects. Rather than just being a friend at work or a friend, an acquaintance. They're not acquaintances, they're your family. So you're expected, there's a conversation that continues. I think you identified that as expectations. You have the expectation that you're in a conversation, they're going to remember what you said last week, and that these are the family rules. Family rules can have, that's another expectation of a family group that you wouldn't have of a group that's outside the family.
Understandings, maybe?
Yeah. Understandings, connections, it's an intimacy. You're more intimate with that group that you have more expectations in. You have greater intimacy requirements, which just meaning the connections that you have with that group of people. So if you identify it as expectations, there's other things. It's intimate relationships, it's connections, intimate connections. That's your tier 1.
Okay. And then who is in tier 2?
So tier 2 are people that you have a connection with that's not, it's outside the family. And tier 1 is just clearly defined as family. That's your household.
Okay, but not always directly your family, because sometimes you're not in contact with your family. So it could be whoever you're living with. That was cleared up in our other conversation.
It's your primary home. Home is how I'd have to say that. Anything outside the home goes into tier 2. So tier 1 is your home. It's the home front. Tier 2 then goes to everything else. It's your extended family. So first, let's just start with that. Kids that leave the house, they're now in tier 2. They're at college, or they're out on their career, or they get married and they move away and have their own family. They've got their own tier 1. So they're a tier 2 relationship to you.
Yeah, they've graduated out of the tier 1 into the tier 2.
Yeah. So, and how does that graduation happen?
By gaining independence.
Yeah.
They don't need your care as strongly as they used to. You're not as responsible for them.
And under the expectation idea that you brought up earlier, that idea, you expect less from them. You don't have an expectation they'll call you or be home at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
There's less boundaries, less requirements, less expectation, less intimate connections with that person. So we may talk once a week or once a month or every 3 months. There's no requirement for the frequency decreases quite a bit. So a tier 2 is lower in frequency than tier 1. In relation to family that has left the homestead, that family is an extended family now.
Extended family. So that would also be like second cousins and aunts and uncles and grandparents.
And siblings. Yeah, siblings and parents, parents of the zeroth person. So you're the individual. You've got a spouse and you've got children in the home. You have brothers and sisters outside in an extended family box in tier 2. So that all those people, uncles, aunts, uncles, great grandmas, they're all out in extended family.
I like how you said box. So if you create a circle around yourself, then you're the zeroth tier, you're the circle. And then outside of that is a circle with your tier 1, your household, your home.
Right.
And then outside of that is a box, because some of your tier 2 people are closer to you and some of them are farther away from you in the corners of the box.
Okay, so we're talking about tier 2. Tier 2 are the people outside your family, outside your tier 1. The first community you serve is that tier 1. The next community you serve is tier 2. Tier 2 is anyone you can reach. And we've got to define how to do that. We're going to get to that point. But if it's just a circle, why would you say that there's some that are harder to get to or further away? What would be further away? Like we're talking relatives, aunts and uncles. Maybe we don't talk to at all.
So maybe they're further away. Would we say further or farther? It is further, because farther is a little bit more literal as far as distance goes.
Farther is a distance. Further is degree. That's what they say.
Yeah. So they're further away because you haven't talked to them in a few years, but they're still in tier 2.
Right. They're there. So the space, I don't know that it's a box, but it's still a circle.
Okay, still a circle. Throw that box idea out.
With segments. It's a segmented circle, though. It's a segmented circle because it's not just extended family. One segment of that is extended family, and it is gradient. So it's graded. You have extended family that, a child that just left the house is in college, you're still talking to all the time, maybe even supplying them some money for food or whatever.
Yeah.
They're still not in the household, but they're going to be closer to you than the child that's got 4 kids and lives in another state.
Right.
You don't contact them as much, so they're further away in that, but they're still in the same segment of that tier.
They're still in the same segment of the tier, even though they're farther away.
Right.
And you don't talk to them as often.
Well, or further away. They're just out there. You don't have as much connection, so the connection decreases. But it's still tier 2. There's no difference between an aunt or an uncle that you only talk to every 10 years, or a child, an adult child that you talk to every week. There's no difference in the relationship.
No difference in the responsibility.
We're talking about service requirement, serving communities. How did we start this?
Yeah.
Is it the communities you serve? Community service. That's how we started this. So the service that you're obligated to, maybe your responsibility towards that third cousin or that uncle that's you only talk to every 10 years, still you're responsible with that relationship. That's your relationship. If you called him, he would know who you are, and there'd be a connection, even though it's not very strong.
Yeah, so we did decide that nursing children are in your zeroth circle. We called it tier 1, but now it's the 0 tier.
Okay.
They're part of you because they're incredibly dependent on you, and they're your main responsibility. And the less responsible you are for something, the further away from you they get. And am I going in the wrong direction with responsibility here? Saying that everyone in tier 2 for you, your extended family, whether they're your adult children that have left the home or your aunts and uncles that you haven't seen for a while, is it wrong to say that you have the same responsibility for all of them?
The same degree of responsibility. Yeah. And I think that's accurate. It is the same degree of responsibility. Some Aunt Leona, who may be out there, you're going to run across her and she'll know that if she knows who you are, you know who she is. You're just as responsible as being part of the family. You'll recognize that. and you're going to treat them as though they're extended family, as opposed to just an acquaintance on the street or another concert goer. You go to a concert and you run into your cousin. Your cousin is someone different running into than just running to the high school buddy. So there's that responsibility, the ability to respond. Again, responsibility, the ability to respond to that connection. The connection is real. And so that's what we're talking about.
All right, here's another question for you. What if you have never met your cousin, like have never spent time with them, but you know that they're your cousin, and you run into them at the concert? You're not going to really treat them different than your high school buddy, because like you might not even say hi or wave or anything. You just know, oh yeah, that's my cousin over there, and over here on this side is my coworker. And
yeah, and so you're going to talk to your coworkers. The cousin is just be someone you might even not even say hi to or nod to, because you recognize them, but they're not in your circle. They're not close enough, but you can still identify them as your cousin. I think you're kind of like Hawaii. You go to Hawaii, everyone calls everyone cousin because they're all related. Everyone on the islands are related to each other. So cousin is just a word that they use out there. And maybe they still do it. I don't know. They did it 30 years ago.
I'm sure they do.
So you know that you're related. There's some connection to you. It's just identifying that. So whether you talk to them very much with it, and that's kind of the tears going out in that segment. You get out to the edge of the segment, maybe you never see your uncle from your paternal grandmother's side, or they're far enough away. You could identify them. You know that they live in Oklahoma, perhaps, but you don't know anything else about them.
And you've seen their picture and you can identify them in the store,
and you know them on your family group sheet. You can see that they're there and they're still alive. They haven't died yet. Cool. But that's all that you know.
So are they still in your tier 2 then, if they're that distant?
Yeah, they are, because that's what classifies them. So I think it's classifications. The segments are classifications. They could still be. I mean, your cousin could still be a high school acquaintance, but really the cousin trumps over the high school acquaintance. Your cousin's always your cousin, whether he's in high school or whether you ever worked with him or not on a job. So you work with somebody, that there's a work acquaintance. That's one segment, is who you work with. The other segment is who you've had acquaintances with, I guess. I don't know.
So then it doesn't matter how responsible you are for them, or it doesn't matter how close you are, then your extended family is just going to be in tier 2. And that means then whether you speak to your immediate family or not, they're still in tier 1? Like if they've completely disowned you, or if you've disowned them, like you've gone no contact, they're still in tier 1?
With the people in your own household?
Yeah.
The person living in the other side of the house that stays in her bedroom and you stay in your bedroom and nobody...
And you don't talk.
You don't talk, you're still tier 1 because you're in the same household. So...
And what if a child runs away from home and they're not in the same household? Like maybe they've been living away for a year, living with their friends or something.
Just couch surfing?
Yeah, but they're minors still. Does that mean that their parents are still in their tier 1 circle? Or if they plan on never seeing their parents again, does that mean they're now tier 2?
Probably. If the child ran away and wants to be gone and the parents are okay with the child being gone, if the parents aren't okay with it and they're following him and tracking him, knowing where he's at, sitting outside in the car, or knocking on the door and trying to talk to him every day, clearly they're still a tier 1. So it's the community service. It depends on how you decide to serve that child, or the child decides to serve parents.
Yeah, okay. So it sounds like you're saying there's a decision for whether they're in tier 1 or not.
Which means someone could still be in the same house and decide that they're not in tier 1.
Possibly. How does that feel?
You're not the boss of me type idea. Thanks for talking, Mom, but you're not the boss of me. I'm doing what I do. So you can't have expectations of a child like that. So just an incorrigible child who's not going to do anything. Kind of like more of a plant in the house than a person. If someone chooses that, then that's a decision. So that person because we're talking about community service. So what are you responsible to serve? It's the responsibility to serve that individual. If the individual says, don't serve me, don't talk to me, I'm fine with my Twinkies and donuts, and I'll drink water out of the tap.
Yeah, and I have a job, and I'll pay for all my food, and I'm paying you rent, and I have my own car, and I pay my own gas. I'm just in this house because I can't leave yet because you won't sign my emancipation
Yeah, because
papers.
I'm not 18 yet. And they don't want to run away. They're responsible enough for themselves. So they've become their own zeroth person, saying, my community is me now. And I'm not part of your tier one anymore. You're in the tier two, the extended family, even though I'm still in your house. I'm the zeroth tier. I'm responsible for me. You don't talk to me anymore. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, can it be possible that that child can be in tier one of the parents, but the parents can be in tier two of the child?
Yeah, so the parents are still serving them with providing the house over their head, giving them everything that they need.
And deciding to be as involved as the kid will let them.
Correct. If the kid did break his arm in the house, they would step in and take care of it just like it's any other child in the house. They know they're close enough that they know if there's a problem or an issue, or they start throwing up. The parents are going to step up and say, let's help you. What can I do to help you? Let's get you to the hospital, the emergency room. Let's try to pump your stomach out, get that stuff out of you, whatever you did.
But you would do that for anyone in tier two, given that you're in their vicinity.
If they happen to be close enough to you. So if there was a family gathering or you were at a picnic in the backyard, someone did that, you'd still take that other person tier two, or you'd take the stranger that was just out in front of your house to the hospital. You do the same thing for any of them. So what's the difference of taking someone to the hospital that's just outside your house, complete stranger, or a tier two relative, or someone that's tier two inside your home? But I don't know if there's a difference for that type of service.
I think that the emotional connection is the difference. I think that if you take your niece to the hospital, you're going to be more emotionally involved.
Invested.
Yeah, invested
in what happens to her. And you're not just going to drop her off the emergency room and say, I don't know her name. I got to get to work.
Right.
If it's your niece, you're going to be there with the emergency room, and you can call work and say, and that's right. So that's the community service. You're going to take that other segment, work segment, and say, I'm stopping work. I'm not going to work today because my niece is in the hospital, and I'm the only one taking care of her.
So is there an emotional facet to these tiers?
Because we're talking about community service. Yeah, it is emotional. And I think it's decision too, because you can decide as the zeroth person, you can decide not to serve your primary home. And that's where the impetus started, the responsibility. You're responsible to serve that. If you don't serve it, what's the consequences? If you decide to be emotionally detached, what's the consequences? What does that mean? The child who decides to emotionally detach from the family, that means that child, though living in the home, is not part of the home. He's snubbed the rest of the family, said, I'm not participating.
He's not part of the home, but he's still part of the house.
Yeah, he's a parasite.
Well, it's a little bit harsh.
It might be a little harsh, but let's say it's the husband that decided. Okay, and here's the reason it came up is when does the husband disregard the family? Is there an appropriate level of responsibility a husband has to the wife and to the kids in the household that has to be met before he steps into the workplace or back with his friends, with extended family, play out with his cousins all the time. We'll go through the other things of tier two. But if you don't, we talked about that. If you're not completely stable yourself as a zeroth tier, you can't really serve tier one.
You can't serve it as effectively as you would if you were healthier.
If you're completely unhealthy, if you're spent, if you can't operate, you can't serve tier one. And so the point is from tier one to tier two. If you're trying to serve tier two and tier one is broken, if you've ignored tier one, you're not going to be as effective in tier two.
Yeah, okay. So now what if we think about this as like a three-tiered cake? So the bottommost tier is you. Well, on a cake it's the first tier, but like you, this is the zeroth tier, or maybe it's the plate that the cake is on. And then next up, which is a little bit on a cake, it gets smaller as it goes up. You've got is the foundation, yourself, and then next up is tier one, which is your immediate home relationships. And they can sit on the lower tier if like some of the lower tier isn't there, but the more you take away from that tier, then the whole rest of the cake is going to fall over. And so you need a strong foundation. And then the next one needs to be strong enough to hold up the one on top of that. This feels backwards though, because then like top down, if you're looking at the cake, then you've got the top tier is the center of all of the circles. But we're thinking about being strong enough
to support it.
Yeah.
It's an upside down pyramid. I That's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Your security and safety on the bottom, first important, and then you've got your, I don't know what's next. I forget. Health. I don't know the direction, but up to self-actualization, or your ego on the top.
And that's a right side up pyramid, right?
Yeah, it's a right side up pyramid, but who you are is, I made some indication in the past that it's more like a Christmas tree. Your self-actualization, you're the trunk of the tree. The trunk has to be strong, but a Christmas tree has a strong trunk right in the center, and then it spreads out. You do have your first community, your safety and security, and then it pyramids up to the top of the tree.
Yeah, it grows those bottom branches first, and then as the trunk comes up through the middle, then more branches come out. The top branches are actually the youngest branches of the whole
and
tree.
They're the ones that you serve less. There's less effort in those branches. And just like a tree, you've got to be the strong trunk. And the branches that you grew first, your family, your tier one, they have to remain strong to hold that tree stable. If it gets lopsided, if the wind blows and it blows to one side, that can topple the trunk, everything will break. It's got to grow symmetrically around.
Or a branch has to be cut off.
Well, it has to grow symmetrical. It has to grow appropriately.
Well, not all trees do. I mean, I guess pine trees maybe grow like that, but
an alpine tree. So I have to talk about a Christmas tree. So an alpine that's going to be a cone shape, and that's what it is. The branches on the bottom are necessary. They still have pine needles. They still operate completely, but then they get little offshoots there too. They have kids, and
yeah, they never move up to tier two.
As you extend out to tier two, that tier one has to remain strong. The tier one can bring you back. I guess if you lose half the tree of the tier one, it gets lopsided and it can topple. With the tree idea, you've got just a single you holding everything together.
You, the trunk, tied to the roots.
Rather than the plate under a cake, you've got to be solid in who you are, or well, for any of it to work. Yeah. If you're not solid, you're not going to be able to work. So that zeroth branch trunk of the tree needs to be solid anywhere. I mean, extended family, if you go out to your extended family, if you're a mess, it's not going to help them at all. You're not going to be helped by that. They're not going to be happy to see you.
Okay. In order to be able to serve effectively your tier two community, then you need your tier one community to be strong and healthy.
That's the supposition. That's the theory. So yeah, let's try to prove or disprove that theory. Can you step out into tier two with a broken tier one, even though you're strong? So let's say you're strong. You are who you are, but you disregard your family, your home instead. You say, I'm just gonna not do that because I like my work association better. Is that kind of what they do with military when you deploy? If a husband's in the military and he's called to go off to war for 6 months or 8 months or a year, and he's deployed on the ship, he's on the ship for 10 months at a time, and you leave the wife and the kids back at home, is he not responsible for the home? Is he stepping out? Is he breaking some rule here?
Yeah, he's changing his tier one from his immediate family to his country or his squad.
To his, yeah, and that'd be his work. He chose that work. If you're drafted, it's different. They don't draft married men; they draft single men and women potentially. I guess we haven't had a draft of women yet.
Not yet, but if there's a draft, I bet they open it to women.
So the draft wouldn't take married men, and that's the point. Is you don't they don't want to break up that first circle, that tier one.
I feel like married men have been drafted before, so we can't say that they just don't do that.
And married men certainly are in the military and they are deployed, and they say leave your wife for 6 months or a year. You can talk on the phone now. With communications the way they are, 50 years ago, they would write a letter and it would take 3 weeks to get there or 2 months to get back. Yeah, it was a bigger problem then. Now you've got FaceTime. You can talk every day.
Yeah, depending on what kind of situation you're in, you might, like, I think on boats, communications are very limited as far as getting to the outside world. Yeah, your tier one becomes your work, but when you're deployed like that, you have work time and you have rest time. And it might not be so blurred. It might be a bit separated. And so you've got the people that you're living with still, and then you've got the work that you do. And the umbrella over all of that is serving your country.
That's just the same as if you were working for a major corporation, for Microsoft or Boeing. You know, I'm serving the good that I'm deciding to serve, whether it's a country. I don't know that there's a delineation, a difference.
Okay.
In that, in who your major boss is. You're loyal to the country or you're loyal to the company that you serve. And the company that you serve says you're going to have to go on the road because you've got these training sessions in these 6 cities. It's going to take you 3 months to get through those. You're the only one that can do it. And we love you for doing that. You go off and do what's necessary for who you're loyal to. And your loyalty in that second tier, your workplace, takes precedent for a time over the family.
Yeah, that's what you choose. That hopefully that's a choice that you made, is sometime I'm choosing this work and sometime there's going to be work trips or deployments, and dear wife or future wife, are you okay with this? Are you okay with not being my first tier for however long I have these other responsibilities?
And you're assuming that still would be a choice. And so you choose to provide for the family and go out because you can earn the income that's necessary to send back home. If you stayed home, you'd have to get the job at the supermarket, and it's not going to be a tenth of what the earnings would be. So you compromise.
Well, you'd hope that it would be better than a compromise, because compromise, well, I mean, I suppose sometimes a compromise is unavoidable.
Got to be a win-win. I hate the word compromise also. Not that you compromise, you both agree that you're going to allow something to happen because I'm going to win with this benefit while you win with that benefit.
Yeah, instead of I'm going to get what I want and you have to give up something because of that.
A correct win-win situation. Neither of you are worried about what you're giving up. You're paying the price by saying this is the cost for getting what I need here. I need the excess income, and so I'm just giving up the fact you're going to be gone for 6 months. It's the way it is. And we'll talk on the phone every night. There are other ways to serve. You don't have to necessarily be physically there in order to still serve that community. So the family still working, if it's strong, it still needs to be strong. If it breaks up, let's say, for instance, the husband's deployed and the wife says, I never wanted to marry a military guy. Why did you join? It's the song, Billy, Don't Be a Hero, right? You got to go to war, but don't volunteer for anything, idiot. Come back to me. And he ends up volunteering for everything. And Billy's off being a hero. And that's a sad song. Sad position the wife was put in. I'd rather be married to you than have you go off and save the country. But that's what you chose.
Being a hero, you can't be a hero like that unless you're unless you have the support of your wife or your tier one community.
If you do go off to be a hero, then you've shunned your wife and your primary responsibility. So there's a primary responsibility. You should take care of that primary responsibility first and make sure that it's a win-win situation there. That then if there's an agreement that yes, you feel the desire to serve your country, you want to join that, you want to be deployed, and those are your reasons, and I understand those reasons. I wouldn't choose it if I were you, but I recognize that you're making that choice and will do these things instead of you being home every night. So let's find the way to make it work, the best way to accomplish it. Now, if she just rejects it, the spouse rejects it and says, no, you're going to have to just stop being in the military. That's not it. I'm happy working with a guy who stalks the supermarket at night. Just do that. I'm not gonna let you leave and be a hero. No hero in this family.
What if you don't want to do that?
Well, then it goes back to the responsibility of the other person in that circle. So then the husband has to say, does it mean so much to me? Can I leave this circle altogether and take myself back to the zeroth and erase that tier one and break up the family? Does the family mean more to me to keep it together? And then I have to leave my career and join a stocking crew at the supermarket.
Yeah. Do you think that's a valid choice to cut off responsibilities that you have for a closer tier for the sake of being able to participate in tier two activities?
Why would you do that? Yeah, what reason would cause you to?
Well, like if you just want to be a military man, but your wife really doesn't want you to, and so you've got to pick military or my wife. And military is your work, and that would be tier two, right?
Right.
And your wife is tier one.
So you can change your tier one, and that's what you're saying. You can say, okay, this tier one that I used to have, a wife and 2 kids, I'm going to divorce that from me, and I'm going to go and join the squad, and that's going to be my new tier one. So it's me and my captain and my buddies. We're going to be the tier one, and you get my alimony and child support and all that stuff. I'll still be there to support you, but I'm not there to support you because I'm doing this and you didn't want me to do this, but this is who I am. Sorry.
Yeah. So is that a valid choice that you can make?
And that's a choice that people have made, I'm sure. You'd make that choice for that purpose. Would it be a correct choice?
Correct. Yes. Would it be a moral choice?
Probably not.
I know that it's difficult to say. There's no absolute on this, but yeah, your opinion is probably not.
The other option, well, is to be happy with a smaller life, a quieter life, less heroic. Just live in your small town, run the supermarket, and there's stories about that too. The hero, the amazing person that wasn't able to be amazing because he's got these requirements to be around the family or someone to take care of. Say there's a special needs child that's never going to get out of that connection of zeroth tier. That special needs child's always in the home. So you can't jump off and do something else.
Yeah, perhaps you could if you had enough money, but you were emotionally divorced, yet still financially supporting.
Then there's moral challenges with that too. If you just put your special needs child in a assisted living facility and say the nurses are here to care for him, I'm paying $10,000 a month, and they're giving them everything. So whether I see him every month or not is going to be fine. He's got the nurses. There's people there. There's friends. So, and that's why orphanages popped up, because kids existed without families. So you had to care for them somehow. The foster system now, when the parent is no longer able to or steps out on their own choice or just because they had to, or they're in prison. So that's the other thing is if you're taken to prison for something like, let's just use the January 6th event. Let's say someone was put in prison for doing no wrong, but being in the wrong place at the wrong time and where they talk about asylum or a political prisoner, people seeking asylum that would be in prison if they were in their own country. And I don't know anyone in that situation. I've heard stories that there are people that have been in prison for 2 or 3 years now for being at the January 6th thing, and they have no representation, but they can't go home either.
In the wrong place at the wrong time, even like they were not expecting at all that it was going to turn out like this.
Right. They're just going to go join make a statement, maybe be part of the crowd, part of the group that promotes what you morally believe in. And after that, you're stuck in prison for years. And there's stories like that. I mean, yeah, that's everywhere, that someone's taken away. When you're taken, you can't do anything about it. It's not a choice you made. It's just a circumstance.
Yeah, and those who you are responsible for or who are in your tier 1, they have to deal with it.
It's automatically interrupted and it's broken and it's not working. They don't like it, but they have to continue. So the tier 1 has to continue. I mean, even the military guy who decides to go off and say, I'm going to divorce this situation. You guys live, I'll send you money, but they still have to operate. They're still tier 1 together. There's, 4 of them, let's say, and they're all zeroth persons on themselves, and they all have a tier 1 that they're agreeing to be a part of. But this guy who used to be a zeroth person and in that tier 1 now stepped out. Same thing as a child that steps out before he's 18. Says, I'll still be here, but I'm gone. So it is a choice, I think, to be a part of that first community.
All right. Can you choose who is in your first community or who is in your second community?
They say you can pick your friends, but you can't pick your family. You didn't choose to join your family. The husband and wife can choose to join each other, but the kids can't choose.
Well, there is some religious idea that you did choose your family, and like this is the family that you chose before you came to Earth. Before you were born, you had a choice of which family you were going to choose, and you chose this family. And now you're stuck with it. This is the family that you've got.
And that's a nice concept, a nice sentiment. I mean, you can assume it's true. Let's just say it's true. It's true you selected, but then you can't say the second part of that, saying this is the family you got. It's family you chose. So it's not what you got. This is your path through life. This is your mission, is to deal with this family because you chose it. And you chose it on purpose, or else God chose it for you and sent you here to this mission on purpose. So that's the other way to think about where you are, where your non-choosing relationships fall, is that there's a supreme being that knows that you were put here on purpose for a reason. The other way to think of it is you just happen to be there, and it's a circumstance that you're living with, and so deal with your circumstances as they are. This is your tier 1 family. Work with them. If they're all idiots, they're just all idiots. And everyone works as, manure spreaders. That's all we can do.
In the movie Ants by DreamWorks, I think, the queen and her princess daughter is talking about how they have to gather all of these seeds for the grasshoppers. And the queen says, this is our life. It's not a lot, but it's our life. This is our lot in life. This is just how it turns out, and we're going to deal with it. There's nothing else we can do, so we may as well just deal with it. So this is the family. Yeah, this is the family you got, and so may as well make the best of it.
And you have a choice to make. You can choose to make the best of it where it is, or you can choose to disappear and be your own zeroth circle somewhere else.
Right. Or predestination. Would that be predetermined? Is it predestination or predetermined life? If your family was predetermined by either you or by a god before you were born, then you'd better like it, because otherwise you're dishonoring bigger choices, bigger plans for you.
That opens up the other conversation of how those things come about. And you better like it. There's not a status of you better like it or else. There's not an or else. It's not required of anybody. That's the whole choice idea. And then not that God gave us choice and the choice, but You don't have an or else. There's no one, the husband that's going to go off to war or go off to join the military. There's not an or else. There's divorce. He's going to have to agree to it. You're going to agree to it whenever you do anyway. So it's an agreement. Is might as well the same thing as what you said? What did you say? You've got to. How did you put that just a second ago?
Well, I don't remember.
You were given this family, so
So deal with it.
you might as well. Maybe it is. You might as well. Maybe that's what it said.
You might as well deal with it.
Just
Yeah.
deal with it. Just operate. You have to do something, and you're always going to do something. That's the automatic. If you choose to do nothing, you're doing something by doing nothing.
And it is a choice whether you are conscious of it or not.
Not choosing is choosing. So whether we're put in the family is what it is. And any change in that tier one can be made. You can make changes in the tier one. You can kick a child out. You can send a child to foster care or to prison. It's possible to end life as well. All those choices you can make, and you make them with your eyes open, and you're choosing what you do with the circumstances that are sentient. So you're not stuck. You're never stuck. You can always do something, but there's always consequences. The or else are consequences you choose. It's like picking up one end of the stick. You're always picking up the consequence end too.
So the question then was, or still is, can you choose who's in your tier one and who's in your tier two? Or is that just still a classification of tier one is the people who are in your home, and tier two is your extended family, no matter how close you are to them or not, no matter how emotionally distant or farther or closer,
Yeah. I'm trying to think, and we talked about first responsibility, or what was the other word?
expectations.
Expectations. You have expectations of tier one beyond what you'll have expectations of the tier two people. And we only started talking about extended family and work. We had those two things. The other things in tier two is anything that you choose to do outside of tier one. Let's say that we were an economy that could work, cottage industry, and you can do everything. The agrarian society, say that 99% of everything a farmer did in the 1800s was on his farm. It didn't do anything else anywhere else. So the kids, everyone worked together in agrarian society. The whole family works on the same plantation, and they never leave. So it's a 40-acre spot, and you're doing everything there all day long, every day. If you do have to leave to deliver something somewhere, you're delivering that in the afternoon and get back that night. When you homestead a place, your first job is to clear the land and get something planted, and then you're growing that crop, and then you're sending the crop off. But sending it off or even taking it somewhere, you're gone for a day or two, and then you're back maintaining the household. Households changed when we left the agrarian society, and industrialization changed all of that. So now you're a forklift operator, and you go on, you operate a forklift 10 hours a day. And so you're gone from the house, and then you come back to the house at night, so that your tier one community is still the family, but most of your time, where it used to operate, you were with the family all the time in your full work. So all of your tier one and tier two, maybe everyone you talked to was still in that same little group. You might have had one person you sold your corn to in the fall every year, and they came and picked it up. And so you have one person outside of your immediate family that you talk to all year long.
Well, and then you have your church community too.
So there are neighbors and friends. Okay, so church is another thing in tier two, where you spend time with friends, got your social environment. And now there's a lot more time, I guess, since industrialization, there's a lot more time to spend in those other tier two activities.
Yeah, there's a lot of automation has paved the way for more outside of the home time. Another question I'm wondering about is, could your responsibility level change according to the time of day or your location. Like, you're primarily responsible for your own children when they're at home, but say they go to school and now you're not as involved in the time that they spend there, and now their teacher is primarily responsible for their care while they're at that location.
But that's 6 hours a day.
And you're kind of in your children's tier 2 at that point. Like, you're of course you're the one that the teacher calls when there's a problem, but assuming there are no problems, you are completely disconnected from that.
You're not responsible in that respect. In that case, the child is going to school. Is the school like a workplace? Is it a second tier thing? I think that's okay. It's a given time. So a period of time, you're not responsible when you leave the house to go to work, running your forklift. You're not primarily responsible for feeding lunch to the kids at home. So you can't do both of those things. So yeah, your responsibilities change, but it didn't mean that you're in another community. You didn't change your tier 1 to the workplace while you're at the workplace. That's kind of what you said there with this. The child doesn't create a new tier 1 around the teacher in the classroom. They're their 0th tier, but they're out to work. You just send kids, that's the industrialization, sent kids off to work somewhere else besides the family farm. Besides just doing stuff around the house, helping out, homeschooling, they went off to school somewhere else, and that's just their job for the day.
So I'm still a little bit confused about whether these tiers are truly just classification systems based on your family and your extended family and your workplace and your hobbies and your neighborhood. And I suppose you could extend everything out past that, whether it's just classification or if there are emotional levels to it and responsibility and expectations. Like, do those all fit together with this, or is it just like saying this is this because you were born in that, and then this is all, like, your first tier is your immediate family because this is where you live, and your second tier is your extended family and your workplace because your parents had siblings and because you have grandparents and because you have a job. And then your third tier is the world because you are, or it's your neighborhood because you live in this house.
Because your house happens to be in that geographic location. Subjective. We had a conversation a while ago that everything is subjective. I think everything is. There's no objective right way to be a tier 1, have a tier 1 family, or even have your 0th tier completely founded and attached. There's no single way to do that. No single way to have a family around you that you call home, that you call your tier 1 community I'm serving first. But if you select that, so you have to select that, and it can be changed at any time, and it can change by any number of circumstances. If it's changed, then you're dealing with a new change in that. Someone passes away, you can't do anything about it. If someone's dead, they're dead. Now they're not part of that group anymore. So the group does continue, but without that responsibility. In that, if you select the tier and you're operating within it, so that's a subjective thing. That's what happens in the moment. At this moment, you have these number of people in my home, tier 1. Tier 2 happens to be work, and tier 2 says you got an appointment at this time, and you're required to meet the obligations for that, and you feel an obligation to meet the requirements for that appointment. So you do that. You arrive at a given time, and you say you're required to stay here until this time, and so you stay there during that time. You're not ignoring your tier 1 if you do that, unless there is if there is a problem in tier 1 that requires your attention, like an emergency. Then you call tier 2 and say, tier 2, I'm backing up. I'm going to take care of tier 1 first. We're going to solve this emergency room. And this will have to be a sick day, or if you have to fire me, yes, you have to fire me, and I'll go find another workplace to work at. It's how you make it operate. I think it's how expectations and responsibilities, but It's all subjective. It depends on how informed you want to be about what you're working on, how informed, how exact,
Involved.
involved. One other thing I have in here too, tier two is hobbies. If you decide that you're a bowler, you'd love to just bowl, or you want to go and archery hunt, and that requires you to practice 2 hours a day with your bow and arrow and set up different targets and different courses you can go through, or decide to golf. There takes a lot of time to do any hobby that you decide to learn and develop. If you choose to do that at the upset of your primary tier responsibilities, then there's got to be an agreement for you to step out. So I think that's what I think tier two is you have to get an agreement from the tier one family that you've selected. Identifying it can change at any time, but it's the family of the moment. It's your tier one of the moment has to agree that you're going to step out to tier two to do these things. And even if they don't like it necessarily, but they say that's a choice you can make, and we'll see you at 5 o'clock when you get home.
Yeah. So you get permission and support from your primary tier so you can get into your secondary tier activities.
What else is there besides permission and support? Those are good things. We talked expectations. Our expectations have anything to do with that? That's what allows permission.
Yeah, there's the expectation that you will return and further fulfill your primary responsibilities.
So if there's a responsibility,
I believe there is inherently responsibility tied with your primary tier, your tier one.
and you agree on those responsibilities, whether they're written down or whether they're implied or inferred or just common knowledge. Common knowledge is you're going to be home every night. This is where we sleep. It's the house. We created this house to sleep in. So you're going to sleep in this house and not next door. So there's expectations, common expectations in regard to that. And so if you're going to be allowed to allow someone to go out to tier two, can you step to tier two without being allowed?
You put tier one at risk.
Yeah, there'd be a breaking of tier one. Tier one has to allow you to step out. And if they don't want you to, if they don't allow you to, you can choose to break up tier one. But to keep tier one solid, there's got to be an allowance to get to tier two. You can't just live in tier two all the time. Sleep at this person, couch surf. That doesn't make a tier one work. Tier one doesn't work if you're just floating around, go on a walkabout.
Well, it works if you have permission from tier one.
Yeah. Well, like the walkabout idea, Australian, I don't really know much about it, but they can be gone for months in the Aboriginal communities. They'll go. And if it's allowed, it's expected. It's like going on a mission or being drafted to go to war, so you're going to be off doing this for a time, and you're going with the blessing and support. That's the other word to use. That you want to be allowed to and supported in it. And I'm blessed in doing it. Receive the blessing of your home and stepping out away from it, away from tier one. Is there anything else that you want to achieve before stepping to tier two? Allowed, supported, blessed by them.
I don't know if there's anything else that wouldn't, assuming that they feel cared for enough, then
They'd have to agree that that's the allowance.
That's the situation allows for this. The situation is good, so now you can go and do your tier two stuff because I feel safe and secure, and you've met your responsibilities in regards to tier one. So now tier one says, okay, I'm full.
And that's a moment by moment thing. Tier one can change anytime as far as its security and safety. Anything, circumstances can change. So I'm comfortable enough right now that you can go to work today. That's fine. But if I start getting depressed and challenged, I don't know which ends up. You can't go to work today because I'm a mess and I can't be left alone by myself here with the 2 kids. So you've got to stay or find a new job. So things like that occur. So to go out into tier 2, you've got to have the support and the approval of the agreement of tier 1 to do that. If you do it without that agreement, you just jump out to tier 2s and just, I'll tell you where I've been when I get back. Maybe that's not an appropriate responsibility, an appropriate relationship with your tier 1 people. It's not that they have to, you're not going to check a box or have to clock out or clock back in. Not necessarily asking you to do that, but just asking you to communicate well enough that you're going to see if you like golf. Okay, go ahead. Yeah, your buddy calls you and you want to go and try golf. Hopefully you don't like it, but if you do like it, we'll talk about that.
All right.
The 3 things that you need to do to get out of tier 1: permission, agreement, support, a blessing. They have to agree, in full agreement, that that's what you're going to do. That's your tier 2 responsibility, and I'm okay. We're okay staying here. Or if everyone leaves, it's tier 1, that you don't have to leave anyone there at the house. Everyone can go out. Kids can go to school, and 2 people can go to work, and the dogs can go and roam the neighborhood. You just let everyone do what they do, and then agree to get back together at some point. But there's got to be an agreement. So it is subjective, and it's based on the moment. That's what I think.
All right. Well, we'll leave it at
We'll
that.
see what that happens, because we barely got into tier 2, and we can talk about what's in tier 2, how to appropriately operate with them in relation to that in tier 1, and then what possibly tier 3 could mean.
Okay. Well, thanks for the talk.
See you later. Bye.
Okay, bye.